50 years ago, on either side of Radcliffe's main man-made border, two young men separately began their research into miniature painting. They had unlikely qualifications. One was a chartered accountant, and the other a member of the Indian Administrative Service. He left the service to become a professor of fine arts at the Punjab University, Chandigarh. The paintings that they examined separately on either side of the border had once been in the Lahore Museum. The Pakistani chartered accountant catalogued the 2/3 that remained in the museum collection after its division in 1947, and the Indian professor used the 1/3 that went to the East Punjab government. These are now housed in the Chandigarh Museum. Most significantly, the Indian professor traced the lineage of generations of miniature artists whose identities would otherwise have been forgotten. Over the past 50 years, the Pakistani chartered accountant has written many books on Pahari painting, Sikh portraiture, Pakistan's culture, history and politics. The Indian professor has published a veritable library on every aspect of Indian art, on its paintings, textiles, and most recently, a masterly tome, The Spirit of Indian Painting, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, 1100 to 1900. Today, that chartered accountant has the privilege and the pleasure of welcoming his Indian friend and artistic mentor, Dr. Brijen Goswami. Brijen is an Indian by accident. He was born in Sargodha.
Wow.
He's the doyen of Indian art historians. He has had the good fortune of having his work recognized during his lifetime by his country, which awarded him the Padma Bhushan. That is the third highest order in India. But Brijen had the better fortune of being married to Karuna, a scholar in her own right. Karuna was born in Lahore and is visiting it for the first time since 1947. So may I ask you, Lahoris, therefore to welcome your daughter Karuna and your son-in-law, Dr. Brijen Goswami.
It is not every day that one gets an occasion or chance to speak about a subject that one knows nothing about. My ignorance about Sufism is of serious proportions, but since I've been asked to speak on this particular subject, I offer to do that. I'm doubly grateful to my very dear friends who asked me to be here. Not only the organizers of this particular festival, but especially to Ejaz and Shehnaz, to Salima, because it is they who have made it possible for me to come back home, so to speak. If I do not know enough about Sufism, why am I here? Largely because I am deeply drawn to it, without knowing anything about it in any great depth. And I'll take you briefly to 2 or 3 events in my own life which drew me to Sufism. Incidentally, on the mall in Simla there is Sufi kulfi which is sold. I tried that, didn't do much for me. I've also watched Sufi Kathak, hasn't done much for me. So I've read a bit, and I like to share with you whatever drew me towards Sufism. I happened to read a simplified version of a great work, Sheikh Fariduddin Attar's Mantaq al-Tahir, the conference of the birds. And in that there is a passage, or there is a mention, a very long mention in fact, of how the birds get together and how one of them says, let's decide who's the most beautiful of all birds. I'm sure many of you know this particular story, but let me take you through it very briefly. The birds all present their own cases. The peacock says, I'm so beautiful. The hudhud says, I'm like this, and so on. And the main bird who's asking them this question says, no. None of you is really like that. It is the simurgh, which is the most beautiful, the greatest of all birds. And they all of them say that we like to know where the simurgh lives. And we like to see him, see it or him. And the bird says, I'll take you there, but it's not an easy journey. So they all say, we are keen to go there. So he says, there are 7 valleys you will have to cross, and they are tough. But all of them say, we are willing to come with you if you show us the way. So they start on that journey. What are the 7 valleys? He says, the valley of talab, desire, the valley of ishq, then there will be the valley of istighna, then there will be the valley of hayrat, and so on. And then finally we will reach the valley called fana, extinction. So the birds all start off, but the journey is so difficult, so hard, that many of them drop off. We will not be able to carry on. They cross to the 2nd valley, more birds drop off. Still more birds drop off when they come to the 3rd valley, and the 4th, and the 5th. Finally, when they arrive at a point where a bird had said, I'll show you where the simurgh is, only 30 birds remain. And then they say, we have all crossed these valleys, so show us where the simurgh is. And then the wonder of it all is, he says, you are the simurgh. Si means 30, murgh means bird. You are the ones who have to recognize yourself. You are the most beautiful if you recognize yourselves. And then there's a wonderful, extraordinary, surrealistic image. And then they looked at themselves, and then a great big mirror descended from the heavens on high, and they all looked at themselves in that mirror, dived into it, and disappeared. Fana. The most moving of all stories, and the most telling of them all. And this is what I thought, an extraordinary world that one needs to enter. It's not easy to do that. What did मीर साहब का जिक्र हो रहा था कि मीर साहब ने खुद कहा है कि ले सांस भी आहिस्ता के नाजुक है बहुत काम, आफाक की इस कारगहे शीशा गही का. Breathe gently here and soft, because it is a brittle world. It is a fragile world that you are going to enter, and any hard, harsh movement will destroy it. So le saans bhi aahista. The second occasion when I was drawn, deeply drawn towards Sufism or knowing something about it, when my wife and I were in Paris, staying with a wonderful couple, Jean and Krishna Ribu, and we were having dinner, and they had invited a gentleman, a very refined, sophisticated gentleman, whom we did not know, and we were sitting there. And suddenly something came. It turned out that he was the former Director General of Archaeology of Iran. Baqirzadeh was his name. And in the course of some conversation, since the revolution in Iran had taken place by that particular time, and he was an expatriate living in Paris at that particular time, somehow the fact that he was separated from his world, I brought in innocently, completely innocently, a couplet that I had heard in my college days by a poet called Sahir Hoshiarpuri, and who said something about being out of your home. कि हाय क्या चीज़ गरीबुल वतनी होती है, हाय क्या चीज़ गरीबुल वतनी होती है, बैठ जाता हूँ जहाँ छाँव घनी होती है. अच्छा शेर है. And I recited that, and Mr. Bakirzadeh really lost his temper. I mean, for a civilized man, an extremely sophisticated man, he suddenly said, "Please stop." And we were surprised. I was stunned. Why should he be? And then he recovered, and then he turned to me and said, "I can only at this particular moment think of," he apologized, "I can only at this moment think of the opening verse of the Masnavi of Maulana Rumi, Bashanuin hai jo shikayat ki kara," asking the flute which somebody is playing upon. I said, "Listen to this, because this flute is full of pain, because it is separated from Naistan, from where it was brought in." That one share, that one couplet had moved him so much, and he was sharing that pain with me, moved me equally at that particular time. What are these Sufi poets, the Sufi greats are saying? And the third is quite a wonderful occasion. I was looking at a painting in the collection of Said, who was the former ambassador of Germany to India, built up a large collection, and his painting showed a group of people listening to music, and underneath the name of one of them was the name Sheikh Sadi written. And by his side was another gentleman, equally grave-looking, bearded man, and he's throwing his hands up in the air, like this. Musicians were playing, some people were sleeping, and so on. Majlis. And I could not make out why this man is throwing up his hands in the air. And then I turned the painting on its back and found the kata of Sheikh Sadi, which I'm sure has been referred to in the morning. Many of you might know it. Extraordinary utterance. And what did it say? It talked about the Sheikh, or whoever it was, entering the public bath one day. Public bath one day, and they says that my beloved handed me a piece of clay. It was so beautiful, so fragrant, that I spoke to that piece of clay. And I said, "What are you? Are you musk or are you amber, that I am completely besotted by your fragrance?" Bagufta man gili nachiz budam. The gili, that piece of clay, spoke back to me. Because in those days there was no soaps, it was fine pieces of clay were used for cleansing yourself. Bagufta man gili nachiz budam, lekin muddate bagul nishastam, kamale hamnashi bar man asar kard bagarna man hamu hakam ke hastam. Said to me, "I am just a humble piece of clay, but I remember I come from the same soil in which roses used to grow, and it is the company that I kept which has made me what I am. Otherwise, what am I? A fistful of dust, a piece of clay." Superbly. Gili khushbu dar hum amruzi, rasidas daste mahboobi badastam. Badu gufta ke mushki ya viri, ke manas bue gul abis mastam, and so on. This ability of a poet to, through a man, make him leave himself and rise to an elevation, to an area, something which deeply moved me. So, here I am with a number of images of the Sufi saints or Sufi personages that I like to share with you. But in my utterance of Farsi, or in whatever I am saying about Sufism, if I have made many errors and I'm going to make many errors, then I'll remind you of a wonderful proverb that the Maoris of New Zealand have, may all my errors go to their proper places in heaven, right? Sufis were not necessarily the main theme of the Indian painters, but they looked at them. It is the Badshahs, it is the Shah, it is the Rajas, the Maharajas whose portraits were made. But the painters were sensitive enough to keep looking at people who they must have been moved by the presence of. And therefore, it is important for us, or at least for me, to look at them, because there is something hidden there. There is some layer, some embedded thing which you can discover that this man, this painter, and I'll not name any painter, has seen that this man knows something else. And therefore, with respect and with a great deal of, shall we say, interest, these painters kept painting one after the other images of great Sufi figures. What you're looking at this moment is an image which I just discovered a few weeks ago in London with a gentleman called Prahlad Babbar. And the portrait of a man standing, I'll show you the full image a moment from now, who's identified as Jami, the great poet. Whether he is Jami or not, I do not know, because there is no truly authentic inscription which identifies him, and even if it was Jami, no portrait of Jami was made in his own lifetime. So these are idealized images, but there is a thoughtfulness. There is a kind of inward turning. The furrow on the brow is not without any meaning. There is a kind of the extraordinary delicacy about the manner in which the eyebrow, for instance, is raised or turns and so on. The look in the eye is exceptional. But do we know more about these people? I don't know. Basically, you and I are in this situation. This is obviously not a portrait. This is a piece of calligraphy by a great Syrian calligrapher of today. Now, these images will escape us. They are elusive, they are shy, you could say. Now, I have tried to make sense of what is in this piece of calligraphy. I think I should read the beginning of the letter Jim, and the moment I concentrate upon it, it slips out. I think I saw Dal here, and the Dal is gone in the next moment, and so on. So it is all very elusive, very evanescent. So you and I are in this kind of a situation. This is what we ordinarily see of Indian painting. We recognize them in this particular fashion. Again, she obviously is no Sufi woman. But these are the things that you and I are used to looking at when we talk about Indian painting. And there is seductiveness in them. There is extraordinary beauty in them. The line is delicate. Soni crossing the river to meet the lover Mahiwal, who's at the other end, and so on and so forth. Like that. So these are the usual images that you and I see as far as Indian painting is concerned. Even when we come to the Emperor Jahangir, and we see him looking at the portrait of his late father, Akbar, we are struck by the opulence of the image, the extraordinary apparel that he wears, the strings of pearls and emeralds and rubies stuck here, there, and so on. So this is what our general impression of Jahangir is. But in the same age, same time, there are other images of Jahangir which are also made like this. I'm sorry, I need to go back, and I don't know how to do that. Wapis? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, thank you. Jahangir, attended upon by the mightiest of the world of that particular time, one of the most famous images of the emperor. Padshah Surat-o-Manias Azlut Fela Shah Nuruddin Jahangir ibn Akbar Padshah Garje Dar Surat Shah Daran Dar Pishe Qayam Leek Dar Mani Wa Darvesha Punadayam Nigah. This man is a Padshah, not only in appearance, not only in Surat, but in Mani, inside of himself. This man, Shah Nuruddin Jahangir, son of Akbar, Garche Dar Surat, in appearance he might look as if there are emperors, he's an emperor, emperors wait upon him. King James I of England, the Sultan of Turkey stand there. Malek Darmani, but inside of himself, his eye always falls upon the Darwish. As a token of his favor or appreciation or homage, the emperor is handing over a book not to an emperor, not to a sultan, not to a painter, but to a great thinker. So there are these images which confuse us like the demons in this cloud of unknowing. But let me take you to this extraordinary painting. Jahangir again. There is a mention in the Tuzuk of Jahangir that he had heard about a great Hindu saint by the name of Jadrup, and he says, I walked so many miles on foot to go to see this man who is a knower of everything. And Jahangir writes that he is a Vedantist, which is the same as Sufis. He says that. Now he goes, walks up to this, and this particular man, Jadrup, is over there in that particular hut. He leaves his Amla Fela behind, walks that distance, and then we see him conversing with the saint. In these paintings, you and I will again and again see a prince, a man of power, going to a man of knowledge. There are two words which we all know. There is the Shah and the Gada. The Shah is the one who has everything, opulence, power, money, and the Gada is the one who has nothing. But the question the painter is asking is, who here is the Shah and who is the Gada? Have the roles changed? You and I have to be aware of the fact that there is this kind of a questioning, or this kind of reflection, or this kind of an embedding of thoughts in the work of the Indian. This man, Jadrup, the emperor writes in his memoir, was living inside a tiny little hole in a rock, and he used to, this is all that he wore, a tiny little loincloth about his middle and so on. But the emperor has gone to him all the way to Kim. There are questions which are asked, which are troubling him, and he wants answers, and he goes to a man. The Sufis are very often shown with a lion by their sides. Meaning what? They didn't train lions. The meaning of this is that their learning has communicated itself not only to human beings, but to all kinds of creatures. So they tamed. Like in an ashram, when a rishi is seated, then all kinds of animals would come and start listening to that particular rishi. So these animals who would be fierce, wild creatures are tamed by the learning. Look at this particular painting. It's of a Sufi saint of the 12th century who is buried at Panipat, not very far from where I live. I come from Chandigarh. And this is of a Sufi saint by the name of Bu Ali Qalandar. the simplest of all drawing, of all portraits. Under a tree, the Sufi sits. Dozanu, legs tucked under him, hands on the knees, but he's looking not directly at you and me, but his head is slightly turned. What is the painter saying? I could be wrong, but I think the painter somewhere has read something of the Divan of Woli Shah Qalandar. And the Divan says, one of the first verses is, Sholai Yade Rukhe Pur Noor Hu Ali Shamo Sahar Visos. The flame of the memory of that Pur Noor face, God, is constantly from morning to evening singeing me. Buali Shamo Sahar Visos. Why is Buali headed in this direction? My guess is that the painter is showing him as if it's not, it could be a posture of prayer, could be. But I think it's more than that. I think he's trying to hear a sound that you and I cannot hear, the unheard, the unstruck sound. Notice the expression on the brow, the furrow of the brow. Notice the puzzlement. Is there a sound that I am hearing? Is it real or is it not? These are the questions that the painter, in a certain sense, must have asked himself and tried to find an answer. There is subtlety in these renderings, and that is what one has to be prepared to pick up. With Dargah Khwaja Nizamuddin Auliya in Delhi. The painter from a distance does this, shows this, and then he takes us a little closer and we see tiny little figures everywhere, entering, seated, reaching the Dargah. And this is one of those rare drawings. I have not seen anything else, showing Amir Khusro as a young boy approaching Khwaja Nizamuddin. A lion sits by the Khwaja, Amir Khusro, this inscription. Obviously not contemporary, it's certainly not Amir Khusro's times or Khwaja Nizamuddin's times, but somebody is imagining. Very often, very, very often, we find the painter brings all kinds of learned men together. Hazrat Dastagir, Khwaja Muinuddin Chishti, Nizamuddin Auliya, Bu Ali Qalandar, the names are inscribed. And they all sit together. They do not belong to the same time. They do not belong to the same place. In a certain sense, the painter is suggesting to you and to me that these men are free of time and free of space. Transcending time and transcending space, they are all together here, and between them very often we find a tiny little parapet or a chowki on which some books are piled one on top of the other, and obviously, quite obviously, the painter is saying this is the kalam that they have written or the kalam that they read. These images that you and I are seeing of Sufi learned men, saints, seated here, are, to me, deeply affecting, very affecting indeed. There are 8 persons here, not one of them is named, but you and I can see that they are engaged in conversation. They do not belong to the same time or the same space, but the painter has the freedom to bring them together in this particular manner. There are wonderful, thoughtful portraits that you see here. One of them has a book open. probably reading from it for the benefit of the other. The other one has a book in his hand, and with one finger it's like a bookmark, he's putting the finger in between the pages and so on. But you and I can see that the painter is deeply involved in what is going on. Likewise again, not a great painting, but again there are a number of Sufi saints seated together, and once again a chowki on which 5 books or 4 books are piled together like this. He is the one who is the senior most of them all, and then we read name, Shah Daula Daryai, Shah Hussain Dadda, and so on. These are men whom one knows. Here is Hazrat Khwaja, there is Khwaja Abul Hassan, and so on like that. So these are images which do not find any place in books of the history of Indian painting. They are footnotes or printed in very, very fine letters, as you might say. They completely escape our notice, and yet I think there is something riveting about them that you and I cannot afford to ignore. This is the image of the Shaykh that I was showing you to begin with. He's standing with a stick in his hand, a staff in his hand, and now you see that he has a book in one hand which is resting against his thigh, and that expression, that riveting expression on the face is what draws me completely, deeply towards this thing. You cannot pass over a painting like this with ease, because it speaks to you. There's a conversation you can set up with an image like this and try and remove the skin, like the skins of an onion have to be removed, one layer after another, after yet. Image after image, men discussing, engaged in deep, meaningful conversation, raising questions, trying to find answers, setting up a dialogue with themselves and with the other. My submission is that when you look at these paintings, you understand that the painter is exploring. He is trying to understand what might be going on in these. When you look at an image like this, then again and again, one of them is setting up a prayer, the text by his side in which some Momil words are written like this, and then there is, of course, underneath, close to him, below him, and by the edge of the water, this man who's seated at the edge of the water is looking into that current of water that is flowing by. What is he wondering about? What is he trying to see? The flow of life? The flow of time? What is it? Why is he concentrating this hard on those waves? This is the painting that I was talking about. Sheikh Sadi, I'll show you a detail of this like this. Sheikh Sadi is the only one who's identified by name towards the left. And that man, that gentleman with the Safed Rish, throwing up his hands in the air, has been identified by one of my colleagues, an art historian, says, that is Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti. Whether true or not, how do we know? But this is the kind of impact great poetry can have on a great saint. Giri Khushbu Dar Hammam Rozi, Rasidas Daste Mahbubi Badastam. That. Sheikh Sadi, I'm sure most of you know this particular thing, when he, in his prayer, I mean, whatever he's saying, he utters a ayat and says, God is nearer to you than the vein on your neck. One man cannot contain himself and goes into Vajr and begins to dance. This is Sheikh Sadi. This is a man who does. The impact of these words, the impact of these learned utterances, the impact of the word of God communicated to man has this appearance, this form. Image after image of men of God can be seen like this. Whether they are Hindu saints or Muslim dervishes, masters, it does not really truly matter. These are men who have a connection, who have established with the powers on high some kind of a connection. Insignificant as some of these drawings might look to begin with, my submission is that they need to be looked at with the utmost care and respect. Whether it is Gorakhnath or Mashandarnath, the yogi toward at the bottom, it does not matter. Look at this painting. It's a construct, it's an extraordinary painting. It's difficult to understand. I'll show you a detail of this. In the background, there's a whole range of people whom one sees in other paintings, individuals who have been brought together, whether it is a Zoroastrian priest or a mullah or a Parsi and so on, or a African or a scholar who has a book in his hand. But in the middle is this image of devotees, dervishes, going into Vajr. पल भर किसी सूरत की जियारत को चले थे, अंदर के कलंदर ने बहुत देर नचाया. अंदर का कलंदर जो है उसकी बात. And at the bottom of the same painting there is this extraordinary panel of men of God from a different religion. Kabir, Namdev, Sen, Pipa and so on, whose utterances resound throughout India. Kabir seen again. In the Deccan, if you go, then there are these Sufi saints who have left the world in Arakash. And this man, this is the great master to whom many people come asking questions. Men who have abandoned the world of opulence and gone into this wilderness. You and I tend to look at paintings generally with a fleeting kind of an eye. The eye makes barely a contact with the surface which is painted. But when we look at these in great detail, from close, as they were meant to be seen, then a world begins to reveal itself. Whether they are yogis or Sufis is a question. This extraordinary image of a yogini from the Deccan, one of the most often published paintings from the history of India, and here she is, having abandoned that there are those palatial buildings which are far in the distance, and having come into this, and there's a little bird which is resting on the palm of her hand. Are they all thinkers? I think they are. They're detailed from a larger painting. Are these men simple beggars? I don't think so. There's something moving about these very, very simple portraits. A prince comes to a teacher, asking questions. The kind of thing I was talking about, the changing of roles between the Shah and the Ghala. There is something that needs to be paid very, very close attention to. The man at the left, in that red jama, khaba, is talking, and the prince who has come is beginning to take notes. You can see the qalam and the dawat by his side. You can see the paper that is in his hand. And everyone, hamatan goes, the entire body having turned into ears, as it were, listening to words of wisdom, marifat. The prince has brought a platter full of gold coins. But the master paying virtually no attention. This, to me, is the quintessence of the kind of work that Indian painters did when they not confronted, but when they thought about men who have attained nearness to perfect knowledge. In the wilderness, this is often published as Aristotle going and this and so on and so forth. Whether it is that or not, whether it is a work by Basavan or not, Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi's work has been published. These are ordinary paintings I'm showing you. But it's not even Indian, these are Irani paintings. But there is a deep abiding interest in these. Maulana Rumi and the dervishes, the whirling dervishes, all in a certain sense. This is one of the paintings where the birds get together and a discussion starts taking place. A competition is held who is the host. But essentially, in its essence, we're talking about men like this. I come back to Guwali Kalandar and wish to draw your attention to the simplest of all paintings of all the Sufis that we have seen. This is not a Sufi saint, but I'm tempted to show it to you, this particular painting. By Abul Hasan, Nadir-uz-Zaman, painter of Jahangir's times, a great favorite of his. But when you look at painting, you start making connections. Every time I see this particular painting, I am reminded of a great poem of our own times by one truly a great poet who talks about his own life, his journey. फिर एक दिन ऐसा आएगा, फिर एक दिन ऐसा आएगा, आंखों के दिए बुझ जाएंगे, हाथों के कमल को मिलाएंगे और बरके जुबां से नुत्को सदा की हर तितली उड़ जाएगी. इमेज ऑफ डेथ. बरके जुबां से नुत्को सदा की हर तितली उड़ जाएगी. ये काले समंदर की तह में कलियों की तरह से खिलती हुई, फूलों की तरह से हंसती हुई सारी शक्लें खो जाएंगी. ये मेरी धरती, मेरी ज़मीं, हंसती हुई ये हीरे की कनी, इसकी सुबहें, इसकी शामें एक मुश्ते गुबारे इंसान पर शबनम की तरह रो जाएंगी. दिल की धड़कन, खून की गर्दिश, सब रागिनियाँ सो जाएंगी. फिर कोई नहीं ये पूछेगा सरदार कहाँ है महफिल में, सरदार जाफरी. फिर कोई नहीं ये पूछेगा सरदार कहाँ है महफिल में, लेकिन मैं यहाँ फिर आऊँगा, लेकिन मैं यहाँ फिर आऊँगा. बच्चों के दहन से बोलूँगा, चिड़ियों की जुबान में गाऊँगा. जब बीज उगेंगे धरती में और कोंपलें अपनी उंगली से मट्टी की तहों को छेड़ेंगी, मैं पत्ती पत्ती कली कली फिर अपनी आंखें खोलूँगा और सरसब्ज हथेली पर लेकर शबनम के खतरे तोलूँगा. मैं पत्ती पत्ती कली कली फिर अपनी आंखें खोलूँगा, सरसब्ज हथेली पर लेकर शबनम के खतरे तोलूँगा. मैं रंगे हिना, आहंगे गज़ल, अंदाज़े सखुन बन जाऊँगा और रुखसारे उरूसे नौ की तरह हर आंचल से छन जाऊँगा. जाड़ों की हवाएं दामन में जब फसले खिज़ां को लाएंगी, रहरों के जवां कदमों के तले सूखे हुए पत्तों से मेरे चलने की सदाएं आएंगी. आकाश की नीली सब झीलें, धरती की सुनहरी सब नदियाँ हस्ती से मेरी भर जाएंगी. तब सारा ज़माना देखेगा, तब सारा ज़माना देखेगा हर किस्सा मेरा अफसाना है, हर आशिक है सरदार यहाँ, हर माशूक़ा सुल्ताना है, उनकी बीवी का नाम है. और आखिर में क्या कहते हैं, ये सूफियाना चीज़ है. आखिर में मैं एक गुरेज़ा लम्हा हूँ, मैं एक गुरेज़ा लम्हा हूँ अय्याम के अफ़सों खाने में. मैं एक लरज़ता क़तरा हूँ मसरूफ़ सफ़र जो रहता है माजी की सुराही के दिल से मुस्तक़बल के पैमाने में. मैं एक गुरेज़ा लम्हा हूँ अय्याम के अफ़सों खाने में. मैं एक लरज़ता क़तरा हूँ मसरूफ़ सफ़र जो रहता है माजी की सुराही के दिल से मुस्तक़बल के पैमाने में. मैं सोता हूँ और जागता हूँ और जाग के फिर सो जाता हूँ. सदियों का पुराना खेल हूँ मैं मर के अमर हो जाता हूँ. What thoughts must have been going through the head of the person who wrote these? You and I can only guess. We are in the situation of looking at a calligraphy where you can probably recognize a jim, probably recognize the beginning of a dal or a lam or a meme, but we do not know enough. At the end of my presentation, may I thank you once again very much indeed for having been here.
Socrates once said, and Vigen hinted at it at the beginning of his talk, I know nothing except the fact of my ignorance. Vigen, Socrates spoke for all of the people in the audience, this evening. You have mesmerized us with your knowledge and made us acutely aware of our ignorance. Thank you so much indeed. I'm now going to ask Karuna Goswami ji, if you'd be kind enough to come up to the stage. The allegiance, please, Karuna. Come. Thank you, dear. Karuna and Bridgen have spent their lives in the research on Indian painting and its culture. And we are delighted that we have both of them here. And for the first time in their lives, they have collaborated on a book. And that book is on the Peshwais. It's in the Calico Museum collection. But it's the first time that they have jointly collaborated on a book. Let me ask you to give a standing ovation to the daughter of Lahore and the son of Sargodha. And I'm going to ask two people who have spent their lives, their energies and their resources to make this literary festival a possibility. Bali, may I ask you to come up to the stage? And Razi, where are you? Razi? Razi Badshah, kahan ho? I should start singing kahan ho tum awaaz do. No?
2 ही मिनट लूँगा, लेकिन इतना है कि ये एक फेस्ट हमारे यहाँ एक रस्म है कि जब किसी की इज्जत करनी हो तो एक छोटी सी चीज़ है जो तरफ से मैं एक छोटी सी अर्ज करना चाहता हूँ। तो ये है कि हमारे, आप बैठिए, 2 मिनट लूँ, 1 मिनट लूँगा। एक जब हम करुणा और मैं बागा से इधर आ रहे थे तो पैदल चलना होता है थोड़ी दूर के लिए, थोड़ी देर के लिए, तो एक अजब सा दिमाग पे असर था क्या हो रहा है। लेकिन हमारे यहाँ एक कहते हैं कि एक जगह है राजस्थान में जहाँ पे एक गुफा है, गार है, तो उस गार के अंदर कोई जाता नहीं है, तो सब कहते हैं कि ये गिरी कंदरा है, ये इसके अंदर आप जाइए तो यू एक्सपीरियंस सब। तो जब हम वहाँ से यहाँ आ रहे थे तो मुझे लगता था कि गिरी कंदरा में जा रहे हैं, कोई एक्सपीरियंस कोई नया है, और मैं आपसे बयान नहीं कर सकता कि किस तरह का एक्सपीरियंस हम लोगों को, करुणा को और मुझे हुआ है। ये जो फेस्टिवल है एक मोजज़ा है, लेकिन मोजज़ा जो मैं लफ्ज़ इस्तेमाल कर रहा हूँ सोच समझ के कर रहा हूँ। मोजज़ा के अंदर एक और लफ्ज़ छिपा हुआ है, इज्ज़। तो जो इज्ज़ है, जो ह्यूमिलिटी है जिसके साथ आप और रज़ी और बाकी आपके साथी सब काम कर रहे हैं, मैं उसका शुक्रिया अदा नहीं कर सकता, तारीफ करें, बहुत मेहरबानी।
प्रोफेसर गोस्वामी साहब, ऑल द अदर पार्टिसिपेंट्स जिन्होंने इस फेस्टिवल को बहुत कामयाब बनाया, आप लोग सब आए, आपने हिस्सा लिया, और लाहौर के लिए मेरा ख्याल है कि ये बड़ी अच्छी कंट्रीब्यूशन है। मेनली ये आइडिया रज़ी का है और उसी ने कंसीव किया है। हमीद हारून साहब हैं, अहमद रशीद साहब हैं, नैयर अली दादा साहब हैं, इनकी एक टीम है, दे हैव डन ए ग्रेट वर्क। अतीक मेरे बड़े बेटे हैं, उन्होंने ये प्रोडक्शन सारी उनकी है, फसी ने सारी प्लानिंग वगैरह की है। सो इट इज़ like a family show with all friends put together who have really, really helped out. And thank you all very, very much. And thank you, Ida.
I wish I had the fluency of the poets that you had heard earlier, Zehra Nigahpa and Amjad Islam Amjad Saab. They were talking about me. Somebody at SARS mentioned a particular poet. And I wish I'd written this poem, but I'm going to recite it for you in honor of Iqbal Zaid Ahmed, his family, and almost every one of those miracle workers who were able to transfer what is a Mughal camp from one side of the road to the other overnight. So to all of the administrators, all of the persons who worked night and day, one night and made it day, and to all the volunteers, our thanks. I thank the Abari when I was in Karachi for the KL. Alone is life, joy and victory. The victory is yours, Bali. Hamid, come up, by popular demand. You're allowed only 1,500 words.
I'll make it 10 with Mr. Goswami up here and the rapturous lecture we've received, with Puji as the interpreter of all those relationships and words that mean so much to all of us in Lahore and Pakistan. Welcome, Mr. Goswami. Thank you, Bali, and thank you, Puji.
Yes.